From the hallowed halls of Epic Financial Strategies here in Red Bank, New Jersey, in the Epic Podcast Studios, this is InfinityX, where we give a stage and microphone to human excellence in the endless pursuit of creating infinite sales opportunities by merging ecosystems. I want to welcome everybody to this evening's session of InfinityX. We are honored and privileged to be joined by the brand ambassador, Mr. Henry Kaminski. Henry, how are you tonight, buddy?
How you doing, David? Can you hear me all right? See me okay?
Yep. See you perfectly fine. Can hear you perfectly fine. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing awesome, man.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And also my condolences, man.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. So my partner, Rob Gill, is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. But, you know, to know where you're going, you have to know where you're from. So, Henry, where did it start for you? Where are you from originally?
Oh, man. So born and raised in New Jersey. Actually grew up not too far from where you are right now. I grew up in my middle age years was in Middletown, New Jersey, and my high school years were in Long Branch, New Jersey.
Long Branch.
And then once I went off to college out in Pennsylvania in Amish country, I had to get my butt back to Jersey. So got a job up here in northern New Jersey at a local hospital, and then just dug my roots deep into here. As both my parents were born and raised up in northern New Jersey. My father from Jersey City, my mother from a small town called Karlstadt, which is right next to MetLife Stadium. Yep. And so we've had family up here for years, and it's just a blessing to be able to now raise a family up here. And I'm in the sticks now. I'm up in the mountains, up in Sparta, New Jersey now, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, my partner, Eddie Gartner, has always aspired to be in the sticks as well. So you're probably going to have a neighbor pretty soon. But
Come on up.
Yep. You know, Henry, I was struck by your childhood story. I know that one of the things that you share publicly is that your mother and father, for a period of time, were having challenges with childbirth. Yep. And then when you were born at a very, very young age, and forgive me if I butchered this, but I believe it's called hypernatremia. Is that what is
hypernatremia? Yeah, it's basically when you lose all the salt in your body, and you basically go into like a shock. From what I gather, again, I'm not a medical professional whatsoever, but as I dug deeper around that story, actually recently, I had asked my father, what was up with that? Like, I would love to get more information on that, because my whole life, my parents have been very vague with trauma in life. I'll give you a perfect example, David. When my dog passed away yesterday, first thing my father said was, "Are you going to let your 4-year-old son watch all that go down? Maybe he should stay in the other room." Yeah. I asked him, I said, "Do you want to come with mommy and daddy?" "Yes, I do." "All right, come on, let's go." And I let him experience that. So it's been like pulling teeth to try to get, so some real facts out of my parents over the years. Yeah. So what I heard recently was, again, no disrespect to my mother. I mean, God rest her soul. She's been trying to figure herself out, her whole life. And what was happening was she was giving me water way too early in my childhood. And so I was an infant, and she kept giving me water, trying to calm me down, because I guess I was colicky at that time. And what happened was it flushed all the nutrients right out of my body.
Oh my God.
And if you're 2 years old or less than 2 years old, I can't be honest with you, David. I think we started letting our son drink water like around 3.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So that was the case. So they got me to the hospital, and thank God, because I'm here today. And I always say this story has always triggered this thought in my head, like, Henry, you're here on borrowed time. You got to make the best of it. And, people are watching, people are watching from above. And by no means am I super religious, but I'm not going to spend my physical life here on earth wasting time, wasting energy. And I truly believe like what you give in life is what you get in life. And that goes on all different levels, your personal, your professional, your subconscious mind, all of this. So you get what you give. And so if I'm not giving, I'm not getting. And so that has been a huge thing for me. I would say recently, David, growing up, I was a very insecure kid, lacked a lot of confidence. Father tried to raise me himself the best he could. Love him to death. He did a great job with what he had and what he knew. But I'm not going to live the next 40 years and raise my son the same way I was.
And, I'd like to touch on, that relationship with you and your son, because I think that really closely correlates between the relationship with you and your clients, as well as I get to know you better, brother. Mm-hmm. You mentioned you went to college in Amish country. Where'd you end up going to school?
Kutztown University.
Kutztown, did you? Okay. What'd you major in? What was that experience like?
So communications was my major. I went in as trying to go in for accounting, and I took my first macroeconomics class. I was like, get out of here. I am not built for this. But one of the things that people told me was, listen, you got to triple down on your strengths. And the one thing, my mother gave me was a personality and the gift to gap, because she loved talk. She came in the room and everybody knew who she was in 3 seconds. And everybody loved her at the end of the night because she had everybody pissing their pants laughing. And so I said, why not transfer majors and get into communications? And so while everybody was in speech class and all of those, public speaking classes and all of that, were scared to death to speak in front of people, I was like, I'll speak in front of 5,000 people, the more the merrier. So I just breezed through all of those classes because I was so good at it. And then as I graduated, I realized I want to lead. I really want to lead people. And so when I got to the hospital, I started very low level, and they were offering for higher education. They were going to pay for it. So I said, why not? So I signed up to Fairleigh Dickinson over here in knack, and I got my master's in business management.
Fantastic. And I would be remiss if I did not introduce you to my partner and the CEO of Epic Financial Strategies, Rob Gill, who I see has just been able to join us. Hey, Rob, are you there, brother?
How you doing, David? How are you? Happy Trajectory Tuesday, InfinityX, and it's nice to see you guys. How's everybody doing?
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Rob.
It's nice to meet you as well, my friend. I heard a lot of great things about you, Henry.
Thank you.
I'd like to jump in it. I'm going to let Dave kind of run with it a little bit, and then I'll pick my spots when I can come in, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Rob, thank you so much. Yeah. And so Henry, so you got your master's, your MBA at Fairleigh Dickinson, but you had a little bit of a struggle, correct me if I'm wrong, in finding, that ideal job, right? Like right out of school, right? I think the first job that you had was at Hackensack University Medical Center, was it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yep. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So my uncle, I, prior to reaching out for some help after I graduated college, I was on all of those sites like Monster and, Indeed wasn't around back then, but I was on all of those resume submission apps and whatnot to try to get a job. And it was right after 9/11. So everything was very locked down. And so my uncle, he has a pretty big construction company up here in northern New Jersey. And he was very well connected with the hospital. So I reached out to him and I said, listen, I'm shooting blanks here when it comes to trying to get a job. And I'm hungry, Uncle Joe. I want to work, but I didn't really want to do construction at the time. I really wanted to have that as maybe a fallback if nothing was going to pan out. So he says, well, let me see what we could do over at the hospital. So I'll never forget this. Is a great story. I go there, and obviously his name is on all the paperwork. And so they opened up this big book, and they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. So they pointed a few positions out, and it's very interesting. So I found this one position, and it had this fancy title, but you're basically checking insurances at the same day surgery center. That's what I was doing, right? And it was like a $32,000 job. So I remember leaving that interview and getting a call from my aunt that night, and she said, Uncle Joe heard that you were, went for the interview. How'd it go? I said, it sounds like it went well. I says, but the job was 32,000. So he gets on the phone and he says, tell him you want 50. I'm like a 22-year-old punk kid out of college. I had no idea, 50. So I says, 50? And he said, what? You don't think you're worth that? And I'll never forget that. That was close to 20 years ago. So I go back into the hospital the next day, and they said, okay, this is the job you want. I said, yeah. I says, but is there some wiggle room for the salary? And they said, well, what are you looking for? And I said, I was so scared, dude. I was like, I don't know, 50. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she says, well, certain positions have certain, ceilings. 50 is a little bit out of that ceiling. But so they wound up giving me, I think it was 38 or 39, right out of the gate. Right. So I said, all right, I'll take it, because he said to me, he said, no matter what they tell you, just take it, because you're going to get in the door that way. And then once you get around and you show your potential, we can move you up. So I get in there, and my boss hated my guts because of who I was connected with. Politics could work both ways, right? So this was actually working against me. That I actually got my foot in the door through a connection, but the boss hated me because she had to take me, right? So what they did was they actually I had a 3-month probation before they actually gave me my benefits. And so this woman just had it out for me. So at the end, she would set me up. She would put these bogus things in people's folders to see if I would catch them as I was checking them in and checking their. Oh, it was brutal. And so finally I took note of all of this, and I went back to him about a month before my probation was up. And I said, I have this all documented of what's going on. So he's like, all right, well, why don't you go to her boss and tell her what's going on? So I did. And that boss had her stuff together. She knew she's like the senior vice president now, or she's way up now at the hospital. And she got me out of there. She says, I'll get you upstairs. You'll be doing the same thing. I don't know if it's more money, but listen, you don't want to work with somebody 2,000 hours a year and hate their guts. So she winds up moving me to the breast center, and it was like $5 more an hour. So it actually worked out. I got a promotion in 2 months.
Got a couple of promotions.
Yeah. So I stayed there for another 2 years. And once I got my master's degree, I've always had this fire inside of me to just level up. So I kept going in for every position that was directorial or managerial. And I just kept getting the door slammed in front of me because I was 23 with a master's degree, 0 experience. Nobody was going to take a bet on me except this one guy. He put me through the ringer as far as the interview process goes. I had to meet with him 6 times until he said yes. But he got me into the Children's Hospital as an assistant director to the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Center. So if you don't know what that is, SIDS is when a baby dies under the age of 1 with no cause at all. Yeah. Yep. And so I was able. So my position there was to not only raise funds for the department, but to take those funds and actually create events to bring all the families in the state of New Jersey that had a baby die of SIDS together for support. So
Wow.
I was responsible for coming up with 4 events a year, so 1 a quarter, right? And so Z100, I got Z100 to sponsor one of my events, and that's where we can actually get into how I got bit by the design bug and branding bug. And my buddy was a graphic designer, was helping me with that event, showed me what graphic design was, and I just was like, I need to learn this. And so I taught myself. I convinced my boss to buy me Photoshop. I said, listen, we're going to save so much money if I just do it all in-house. So I don't know if that was the best thing or the worst thing she ever did for me, because once I got that program, I went to town, and I not only did everything for the hospital, but I started a side hustle.
Yep.
And that was the game changer.
So Henry, let me ask you a question. It's Rob Gill. Where part of, because I missed the beginning, what part of Jersey did you grow up in?
So born and raised in born at Riverview Medical Center in Red Bank, but most of my childhood I was raised in Long Branch, New Jersey.
Is that where you're located now?
I'm up in Sparta now.
Oh wow. Okay. So I kind of did the reverse. I came from North Jersey and then came down here early in my career in Red Bank.
Very cool.
Yeah, man. So it sounds like to me that the early years created a competitive desire in college, from what I was hearing. And somewhere in college, I don't remember too many people I know getting their masters at 22, 23 years old. So that's pretty incredible. You know, the discipline there is on point. What I love is the entrepreneurial side of how you found your way through this Photoshop, right? And Z100, being able to raise money for a cause bigger than yourself. It had probably some kind of meaning to you that gave you purpose every single day. It gave you a why. You were able to have some juice and wake up in a way that maybe other folks didn't have to do it. And to organize 4 of those a year, they're not the easiest things in the world to do. And, you know, people lost their children and they want to be heard, felt, seen, and listened to.
Yeah.
Incredible. Hats off to you. Can you tell me, before we get into the branding side, your first experience that you may know of that you actually were an entrepreneur earlier in your life that maybe kind of tapped into this opportunity once you started going down the Z100 path?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, unfortunately, it's a funny story. And this is a crazy question that is going to haunt me forever. And I just have yet to get a good answer from either of my parents. These 2 knuckleheads tried for 16 years to have a child. Right. And they both kept up coming. It took them 16 years to have me. Right. And once they did, I think what happened was my mother didn't realize the responsibility of motherhood and actually raising a human being. Yeah. So she filed for divorce. There was a lot of other stuff going on. But these 2 battled out a horrible divorce for over 6 years between my age of 10 and 16. And my father was the one that actually got custody of me. So here's a single dad, mid 40s, late 40s, because they had me when, and ironically, we had our son pretty old. Well, so my father was like 39 when he had me. So, you know, trying to raise this kid on his own. So he was a shop steward for UPS for 33 years. And he had 3 other side hustles because he was a really sharp mechanic. He still is to this day. Any toy that broke this day, he would fix it and it would be good for 30 years. And, but he taught, like 13 years old, I'm mowing lawns, Rob. Yeah. You know, 12 years old, I'm under the car with my dad holding oil filters up and doing oil changes, you know. And so I just learned at a very young age that you got to hustle your butt off to have anything in life. And I give my hat off to my father, man. He sacrificed a lot to raise a child on his own, and he was not afraid to work to make sure that, you know, there was food on the table and clothes on my back.
Thank you for sharing that. And if you don't mind me asking, how did your relationship with your mom turn out?
So it was rocky for most of my life. And it wasn't until later on in life that we actually had a relationship that was solid enough. But it was tough, man. You know, it was really tough. She never came to any one of my graduations, and that really hurt me. So, you know, I had a really big ego 12 years ago. And you know, when I got married, I was like, you're not coming to my wedding. And, you know, that was a real tough decision I had to make. And, you know, be honest with you guys, not to get too personal, but like, I was afraid she wasn't going to show up to that. And,
you don't want to deal with the rejection. Yeah.
I didn't want to be disappointed, because she would always say yes and then just not show. Right?
It's interesting. It's interesting how, because I relate to the feeling of fear. I'm not saying this is you. I'm going to say it was me, but I had an overwhelming fear of rejection growing up, which eventually led me into drugs and alcohol, which eventually led me to being sober since July 1996, one day at a time. Just celebrated 25 years.
Congrats,
the point
man.
is, when I got sober, thank you. When I got sober, or prior to getting sober, my desire to sabotage relationship would preempt anyone before they could do it to me. And then when I got sober, because then I had to deal with all the stuff that I just ignored for 25 years, I would be able to do exactly what you said is, hey, I'm not even going to invite that person because I don't care who it is. They don't have a chance to say no to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
I relate. I'm not saying that's you, but I can relate to that feeling.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for that access. Thank you for your heart. Honestly, look forward to hearing what's about to happen next. And I just wanted to kind of get a little feel. And listen, one of my buddies that I grew up with, he was raised by his dad, turned out to be a very successful person in life. And you know I seen from a distance what that was like for him growing up. And you know, so that's why I was able to kind of connect with you on that. But so tell us about what happens after the Z100 sponsorship and where it led us to where we are now.
Yeah, so it's crazy, man. So we had that event. We raised about 25K. That was a lot for me back then. And we went on, we did some cool things, but what I started to do was really try to build up my side hustle as a designer. So at the time, you know, again, early 20s, I was big into the nightlife scene. You know, it was sort of a rite of passage up here in North Jersey. Like, we always went out to the clubs, and Jerry, the guy that taught me graphic design, happened to be a club promoter. That's how I got the venue for that fundraiser. And so he started kind of introducing me to all the other promoters that were up here doing nightlife. And they all started hiring me for the nightclub flyers.
Where was it? Was this in the city or is this in Jersey? Like where?
Well, this is North Jersey. And then what happened was I got so big where I started bleeding into Connecticut. I started bleeding into New York. And there wasn't one club in the tri-state area that I had not worked for. So I had the whole game locked down. And the funny thing, I look back and my designs were awful. But the one thing that was funny, and this is the big takeaway I want everybody to get. I knew I couldn't outskill my competition.
Yep.
So I had to figure out where they were weak. And where they were weak was turnaround time. My clients wanted things yesterday. And as a self-taught designer, from pure naivete, I think, right? I would get things done 10 times faster because I didn't know all the design detail that went into a project. So I would take all these shortcuts, but it would look just as nice, or if not nicer at one point. And so my clients absolutely loved me for that. And they gave me all the business. They gave me all the business. And
did they give you the business, Henry, because you got to them first with the result in the product? Or when you say shortcut, were you working an hour early and an hour later every day compared to everybody else?
Well, I can't forget to share. I stayed at the hospital 3 years before I went out on my own.
Okay.
And I would work 9 to 5 at the hospital, come home, shower, go to the gym, come home, and literally design my ass off until 4 or 5 in the morning, sleep an hour, and then go to the hospital back at it for 8:30. And I did that for about 24 months straight.
Wow. That's Gary Vee style right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And people don't hear that or see that side of me as much, I think, as I should share that. And
People should hear that message. That's an incredible message right there, brother.
Yeah,
That's the truth about success. Success, as you know, doesn't show up at the front door. Just so we're clear.
No,
you gotta go get it. Yeah.
No. So I did that, and finally, I was young, so I burned. I had that midnight oil just burning, and it didn't even faze me. A couple of Red Bulls did the trick, and I was gone. Right, but try to do that now at 40. It's a whole different story.
Try it at 50.
So I did that, and then the hospital was cutting back. It was 2008. They were coming down. There was a lot of stuff going on with the hospital. They were cutting back a lot. So finally, I think they just started to catch wind of what I was doing, because I won't lie, my hospital work started slacking because my side hustle was making more money than the hospital money. And the only reason why I was at the hospital still is for the benefits. Yep. And so they saw that, and they started to kind of sabotage what I was doing a little bit. So I'd come back from lunch, and they'd be like, all right, you're going to go down and be a secretary for Dr. So-and-so from till 4:30. And they started to put the wrench in the wheel a little bit to slow me down. And then finally it caught up to me, and they basically said, listen, come first of the year. If you want to stay here, you can stay here, but you're going to be somebody's secretary. And that was pretty much the sign or the hint, like, beat it, get out of here. Cause I know you're not going to be okay with that. So I said, all right. So I went to my uncle. I gave him the respect. I went to my uncle and I told him, this is what's going on. What do you think I should do? I don't know if I could sustain this business. I don't know if it's something that it's going to be long-term. Here's another big wow moment in my life. So he meets me in his office on a Saturday morning, and I go in and I tell him what's going on. And I said, and I was so scared. I was like, maybe I could just work here and work construction and maybe do, like, I don't know, project management or something. And he's like, Henry, your cousins, they all went to school for this, what would you do here? Like, I don't even know where I would put you. And he said, we do big jobs. Like, we build highways. And if you were on a project management job and you didn't bid it right and everything came falling down on you, how do I have that conversation with you? He goes, you're a bright kid, so I wouldn't put you behind a shovel, but I really don't know what I could do. So he said, here's what, and this was his way of saying no. But he said, let me talk to my daughter. Let me talk to, the VP. Let's see if there is a place for you here, and I'll get back to you. So I had like 3 weeks to get back to my boss with an answer. So week 1 goes by, nothing. Week 2 goes by. Now it's like coming up on week 3. And I'm like, is Uncle Joe going to get back to me? Cause I gotta give him an answer. Well, he never got back to me. And I had seen him multiple times in that period. Never brought it up in conversation, nothing. Like, we never even met that day. So I said, I got it. That's the answer. And that was it. I went back to my boss and I said, I'm out of here January 1. And I remember leaving that day and saying, all right, Henry, the biggest bet you ever made on the biggest bet you ever made in your life, and I'm not a gambler, was today, because now you're betting on yourself.
That's it.
And
it's a great bet.
Yeah. And I went, and this was the funny part. I grinded my ass off for that year. And I remember going to see my accountant around tax season. And he said, how many employees do you have? And I said, me. I don't, I'm everything. I'm the bookkeeper. I'm the salesperson. I'm the delivery boy. I'm the designer. I'm everybody. He said, you did $248,000 this year.
Wow.
And I didn't even know. I didn't even know. I knew that money was coming in and I had no time to spend it. So I saw it accumulating, but I had no idea that I was doing that kind of money as one person at that age. Right. So that really gave me the chops to keep going. You know, obviously you got something going on here, Henry, get after it. So I just went full throttle, and 2 years later, I made my first million. And then right after that, it was like every 24 months, another million would roll in.
Look, let me ask you, what was your age at the first million, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 27.
Incredible. Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And is that when you began to like dump money back into the business and grow the business and the brand? Like, tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like.
So here's a great life lesson. I was considered young money back then.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you don't know what that means is.
Well, I know what it means. I owned a boxing promotional company and all the fighters used to call me Young Money.
Yeah. Well, young money.
That's how we give them money. And I didn't know what to do with it. Yeah.
So exactly, Rob. So I was 27 years old. I had more money than my father probably saw in his whole career. Yep. And I did not know what to do with it. Exactly. So without financial literacy, what does a 27-year-old do that's in the nightlife scene? He goes and buys expensive stuff. Yep. So like, you know, I had Range Rovers, I had Escalades, I had 6 Series convertibles. I had 4 cars at one point, and I did not even have a garage to put them in. That's young money, right? That's young money. I would go on these lavish vacations, and what was happening was I thought I was like showing everybody like how successful I was and how proud you should be of me and this and that. All I was doing come later on in life that I learned, I was just creating so much friction and tension and resentment between my friends, between my family. And it started to really dismember my relationships. Yep. And I remember because my wife, she still carries around the first business card I ever had for myself. So she was around before I had a pot to piss in. And I remember when I was getting too big for my britches, she'd say, Henry, I didn't sign up for this. I don't care how much money you have. That I grew up with money. Right. So it doesn't really faze me, but I didn't grow up with money. My father would take me school shopping, you know where? Canal Street in Chinatown in New York City. Yep. That's where I got my school clothes. Yep. So when I came in the money, I wanted to eat, right? You get it. Yep. So that's what happened. So I could not afford not to work because I spent every dollar I made.
And then you had the commitment towards the material trappings that you purchased.
Oh, forget it. I had to show everybody how successful I was. Again, coming up, very insecure, low self-esteem. I have to flash. Otherwise, you think I am worthless or less than. And that caught up to me really quickly.
Or I'm worried that you think that I'm worthless or insecure. Yeah, exactly. I get it, brother.
So I dealt with that for years.
Just have an open conversation. Were you dealing with that in therapeutic ways? Was there breakthroughs for you? How did you be able to overcome these things? For any of these new folks that are on this call here, they could have businesses, they could be stuck emotionally, there could be a spiritual disconnect. If you have a success share, feel free to do it. If not, we could totally move on, whatever works for you.
No, I think it's a great part of the story. So 5 years into my business, I run it to the ground. I got out of the nightlife business because I was getting old and I didn't want to be in that scene anymore. It was not good for my health, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't good for a marriage. So I started to get out of that scene, and out of sight, out of mind. If you're not showing up and showing your face, you're not getting the gigs. And then I started seeing a lot of competition come in, and it was a race to the bottom as far as price goes. Mm-hmm. And, people were doing things for like $25 at a clip. And I was like, I can't afford that. Like, I can't afford to do it at this cheap. So I started to really self-sabotage the business, and I ran it straight to the ground. And I came home one day and told my wife I'm broke. And it was one of the hardest things I had to say to her.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I tried to keep this facade up with the Range Rovers and going out to the dinners every week, twice a week, and finally it all caught up to me. And so this is why I love my wife, all 5 foot, 100 pounds of her. She jumps off the bed, goes into my office, grabs the laptop, comes back, opens it up, and she says, let's get to work. Now I'm thinking, wow, where are we going? What are we getting to work on? Like divorce attorneys, or like, are you going to help me get out of this mess? And that's what she did. So she pointed me, she kind of gave me the nudge saying, Henry, you need help in business. You're an excellent designer, but you need help in business. Yeah, you're a hustler, but you have no infrastructure. You're one of those Henrys. High earners, not rich yet.
Henry. I like that acronym.
High earner, not rich yet. And,
so you're a Henry.
Yeah. And by coincidence, my name is Henry. So it worked out well. Oh, yeah. And it was very memorable. And so I started focusing in on getting help, getting coached. So that's where I started to point my direction. And that's when I got my first business coach, who actually turned into a client. And the first thing he said to me was, Henry, you're an amazing designer, but look at this website. Now, this wasn't the website you see today, but he said, beautiful website. I had just spent 26 grand on it. He said, but it's not optimized to sell. And my next bigger question is, where are you on this site? You are nowhere to be found. You have this big personality and a lot to say, but you're just this beautiful portrait. But what makes you different from all the other design firms out here? Nothing.
Yeah.
So I had to swallow that 26K. That was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made.
Yep.
And had to redo the whole site. And that's where, I said, I have to get this origin story out. I have to tell people why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have to tell people my story.
Yeah.
And that sold. Yeah.
Well, the truth, when you speak from the heart, you're always going to touch the heart. You'll find the avatar that's just like you, at least initially, as you begin to share your story, your experience, strength, and hope. Amazing. And thank you for that access. And your wife came in and saved the day, probably one of the many times in your life together. I guess the question is, after you got the coach and things began to take off, what happened next?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things he told me was, Henry, if you want to get to that 7-figure level, you have to replace yourself. You have to. Like, you cannot be everything inside of your business anymore. And I said, all right, where do I go? How do I start? And he's like, well, that's something you have to figure out because I don't know your business.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah. So I started with a project manager, and I did not have the proper infrastructure yet for an employee. So I hire her, and she goes, all right, well, what do you want me to do? I said, project manage. She says, well, all right, what's your process? I go, process? That's what you're here for. Like, don't you come up with that? She goes, no. Like, so I was given the keys to the Ferrari, but like the car was nowhere to be found. Right. So, so she helped me build those out. And then we hired our first designer, our second designer, our copywriter, our developer. And then we started to build out this whole organizational chart. And slowly but surely, I got out of the practitioner role, and I became the CEO. I became now the person that's operating the business. I'm not in it. I'm on it now. Right.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely we got to build that out. And then it started to become a well-oiled machine. Now, as you grow, you learn your standard operating procedures got to be airtight.
Yep.
Otherwise, you take on one too many client and that whole thing comes crashing down. Yep. So that's what happened. For about 4 years after that, I started to pick up some major momentum, but my processes and systems could not sustain that volume, right? And so I had 2 disgruntled clients come hit me at the same time, and it wasn't their fault. It was mine. I didn't have my shit together back then. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I had to refund like 40 grand in a day.
Yeah.
And that put me in tailspin number 2.
Yeah.
How the hell am I going to get out of this now?
Yeah.
So I worked my way out of that. And I said to myself, and that's when my son was born. So that's about 4 years ago.
What's your son's name?
Dante.
Dante. What's up, Dante?
Yeah. He snuck in here before.
Yeah, saw a guest appearance.
Right. But so when he was born, I knew that I had to get my act together if this business was ever going to maintain its integrity, respect, and quality. Right. And so I went balls to the wall with really investing in myself, because I still needed that financial intelligence. I didn't have it yet.
Absolutely. What kind of investment and Henry, what kind of investments? So, Dante's born, you now started pouring money. What was it that you poured it into specifically?
So human resources, human resources. I said, we need more designers. We need more copywriters. We need more people.
Just back into the business. You dumped it back into the business.
Dumped it back into the business. Yep. I hired specialists. That was one of the things. Like I looked at what I needed, right? At the time, video was very big, right?
Yeah.
And so I needed a videographer to come and not follow me around, but like create these clips out of B-roll and things like that. So I hired specialists, and that's one of the things I want to share with you guys. That's what really scaled this business. So I'll give you a quick example. I had 2 designers working for me at the time, and I had one working on website design and one working on packaging design, but I had them in the wrong roles. They were in the wrong roles. The one that I had on web really loved packaging and vice versa. And it started to show in the work, because I was like, oh, come on, like this isn't quality. I said, how confident are you in web design? They said, be honest with you, Henry, I really like package design, but I don't know how to say that. I said, well, why don't we just switch roles? Because this guy over here wants web design. Like that's his thing. And so we swapped roles, and productivity and quality and everything went through the roof.
Isn't it amazing? One small adjustment, like, and by the way, this was not overnight success, because it took you 13, 15 years to get to this point where you made that one shift. But it was an increase in base camp along the way, because, you still stuck to your core values, as you made every human mistake that people make along the way when they're experiencing a level of success that they weren't trained in life to be able to handle when it came our way. Monetary, I don't think my dad ever made more than $27,000 in a year, and he worked 3 jobs. And so I get everything you're saying, but the one adjustment, and listen, standard operating procedures and measuring and monitoring on a daily basis. I kind of went through the same process over the last 3 or 4 years, but just that one adjustment, and then all of a sudden everything just changed, but it didn't, right?
Right. So what we did was we had people come in where I knew I was struggling, and I got help. And so one of the things when you scale, so what we work with personal brands, personality brands for the most part. We want to help guys like and gals like me that have or have a consulting practice, or they're a doctor, a lawyer, some sort of personal brand that they want to monetize their expertise. They have a skill set, they do good work, and they want to scale that somehow, right? So that's where we focus on. I've worked with bigger businesses. I mean, Bon Jovi was a client for 2.5 years, and Russell Brunson was a client. And so we've worked with some big brands before, but I really like the folks that are stuck in six-figure land and want to get to 7, and they don't want to make all the same mistakes I did in the past 14 years. So, but one of the things that I really tell them to focus in on right away is to focus in on the who, not the how. And there's this great book by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How. And he always says, like in this book, it's don't focus so much on how things need to get done. Focus on who is going to do them for you. And just hire that out. You know, one of the biggest takeaways in my master's program, and I took the dean of students had these classes, and I always made sure I got him at least twice a semester because he was such a good professor. And he said at every class, allocate your resources, allocate your resources, allocate your resources. And it like just sunk into my head and in my nervous system. And so I realized, like, okay, the world is abundant with resources. It's our job to figure out how to really allocate them properly. So when I realize I need a video editor to do a specific task, that's the person I'm going to get. I'm not trying to get behind that camera, right? Yes, I can go mow my lawn. It's going to take me about 40 minutes. I charge $2,000 an hour.
Yeah.
So for me to get out there and mow the lawn, how much money am I wasting?
You lost 2,000 every
right?
week.
Yeah. So that's not a good use of my time. And I love my landscaper. Don't get me wrong. We need landscapers. I'm not saying mowing lawns is a bad thing.
But that's his thing.
What I'm saying is, the only thing we have is, is time, right? And it's very, very finite, and you really have to use it wisely. So I don't know how to edge a sidewalk, and I'm not going to try to figure it out. I'm going to have somebody that can do it with their eyes closed and call it a day.
So Henry, let me ask you a question. So what does it look like for you? Why are you doing this? What does it look like for you 5 years from now? If we jump on another call 5 years from today? Assuming we're both hitting the strides that we want to that we want to hit. What does it look like for you?
All right. So so there's two questions kind of blended in there. One was, why are you doing it now? And two is, what does it look like 5 years from now? So I'll give you the first answer. When I turned 40 last year, I made a commitment to myself. I said, you've scratched and clawed your way to success from day one, the past 40 years of your life. You will not live the next 40 years, God willing, the same way you lived your first 40, because you're much smarter now. You're much wiser now. Okay. I didn't have a lot of guidance growing up. I had to learn the hard way. Many, many times in my life. Okay. My son has an opportunity to learn faster and not have to go through all of it. He's going to make his own mistakes, and he's going to do his own thing, and he'll have to learn some things the hard way. But the reason why I do what I do today is because there's going to come a day. He's 4 tomorrow.
Wow.
Right? There's going to come a day where he's going to Google his father's name. And the only thing that I want is for him to read, for him to see, for him to hear, and be proud of his dad.
I love that.
And again, I didn't have the stepping stones that I am going to leave behind for him. he's going to listen to this podcast one day. He's going to watch this video somewhere. And I said something in this conversation that is going to help him become a better man. I'm not going to be around forever.
Yeah.
So this content will outlive me for sure.
Amazing.
And so I want every interview that I do, I'm leaving something behind for him to pick up and to figure out. Now, the second question, where's 5 years from what does 5 years look like from here? Well, I consider myself a forever student. So I'm always going to be learning, and I'm never going to know it all. But one thing I will know is I know how to scale personal brands now, right? So what I would like to see is I spend most of my time doing this stuff during the day and working with clients one-on-one on strategy, all the design and the build and the funnels and all that gets done by my team now.
Does that include a social media presence as well? Just asking.
Yeah. So when we brand a business, whether it's a personal brand or, a business, part of that branding process is to establish their social media identity, their online identity. So that's part of the Brand Accelerator program. Once we get done with the strategy, once they get done with me, now we have very informed information on how to brand them, how to design, how to message, how to build. Okay. So my team does all of that, right? I love working with my clients one-on-one on strategy, but I think 5 years from now, I'm going to be more of a thought leader. I'm going to be more doing this stuff 100% of the time. And I am actually going to replace myself one last time. And I will have a row of strategists now.
Yeah.
All trained by me, working with clients. And I kind of pop into those strategy sessions on occasion and see how things are going and add my 2 cents. But that's where I see. So I see me at the top as the thought leader. I see a band of strategists. And then underneath the strategists, we have a full-blown execution team that actually does all the build outs as they're doing now, but just at a grander scale. So,
I'm thinking out loud about something. And I'm not even sure if this equates to you or not, but I know a very good friend and partner of mine, Chris Crone.
Yeah.
Chris has a media company that he's starting. And what he's doing, because it sounds like to me that you have clients that already have audiences, and what he has geniusly put together is the ability to manage, let's say, 8 to 10 people, ideal avatar social medias, but have them, and now I'm going to take a cue out of my other partner, Sean Callaghy, founder of Unblinded, and create a frictionless ecosystem merger amongst these different social media platform, different social media avatars. Okay. Like one could be real estate, one could be finance, one could be, e-commerce, whatever, but there's 10 different people, and have their communities be able to work together with each other. And I'm not saying that you said that, but I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, is that something based on, if you're the brand expert and you are the one-stop shop on how to not only create the brand, tell the story, but also be able to put together all the different social media platforms in a package. Imagine if all those groups were working with each other some way to build out their businesses. And listen, I've never come up with a creative thought in my life. I've just taken other people's creative thoughts and then have another creative thought. But that's what just hit me when you were sharing that is, I don't know. I just, it sounds like you're up to a lot of big things right now. And I know I've seen what Chris has done, which is just astonishing. The amount of traffic that he gets on a monthly basis just on his own channel. He just brought on Dolph DeRoos, another very good friend of mine. And Dolph's channel is growing like rapid fire. And he wrote like a best-selling book, and a New York Times best-selling book that they're going to be able to start like redoing all that stuff on some of the digital platforms. It's pretty crazy. Awesome. And to your point, your message about my son, I have 2 boys and a girl, and my wife, and being able to, our digital currency living forever, these videos, That's pretty incredible, man. And I am going to adopt that into one of my whys, no doubt about it.
No,
And I will give you all the credit in the world.
Thank you, man. Listen, it all starts with that, man. And again, it all goes back to my original story. Like, I'm not going to be here forever. And I know why I'm here. I'm here to serve. I'm here to help people. I'll tell you a funny story. When my parents were going through a divorce, I was in 4th grade. And I don't know if you remember this far back, but we would open up the textbook and every class member would have to read a paragraph and,
Sure.
right. And then, and I'll never forget it. It's my turn. And I completely collapsed because I wasn't a good reader. And I slammed the book and I start crying hysterically. I don't know. Was I 7 years old or 8 years old at 4th grade? I don't know. And she goes, "What's the matter?" I remember her name, Mrs. Harris. She says, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "My parents are going through a divorce and it's horrible and I don't want to go home." And I remember she said, "All right, guys, we're done reading today.
Wow.
We're going to help Henry." And so she went for like a half an hour and she talked about life and like what a divorce was. And next thing you know, I see all these hands popping up around me saying, "My parents are going through a divorce too."
Yeah.
And I don't
People
know.
being real. They were able to relate.
Right. Yep. But I forget the details. I remember Mrs. Harris set it up where I was in the back of the room at one point, and one by one, kids were coming up to me asking me for advice. Don't ask me how she was able to mix that and remix that and make that happen. But at that day, I said, I am on this earth to help people.
Unbelievable.
And at the
because
same
it was
time,
empowering.
Yeah. And at the same time, I was being helped by those people those kids that were struggling with the same thing that I was struggling with, coming up to me, asking me for help. And so I'll never forget that. And then when I got into college, I had high school, I had this English teacher who just saw something in me that I did not see. And he would always volunteer me for things. And I used to get so mad at him because I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't think I can. I don't have that leadership. Like, I'm your best number 2, but I can't be your number 1. Like, I don't have that in me. And he kept pushing me. And then when I got to college, I had some momentum behind me and I began getting involved with school. I was never in a frat or anything, but I started to get involved. And I became an orientation facilitator, which basically you helped every freshman. They come for 2 days and you kind of show them around. And I did that for 2 years. And that's where I think I really built up some leadership capability. And then when I got into my professional career, I knew I needed to lead, and I had to lead to feel fulfilled. And yes. I just never looked back after that.
Incredible. What verticals do you see the greatest opportunities for in business now? Right, because you're obviously speaking with multiple styles of businesses, whether they're small or medium size. Where are you seeing the high growth verticals, and like where do you see opportunity that should be concentrated upon?
Yeah, so you got to find the gap between what your competitors are doing and where the customer's frustrations are. That's what you got to look for. And that's where you got to attack, right? So there's a gap between those 2 points. That's where you got to go in. Look, there's a great podcast I listened to. It's called Robin Hood Snacks. I don't know if you ever heard, Robin Hood, the app, the investing app.
Yep.
Well, there's a podcast arm to it called Robin Hood Snacks. I highly recommend you listen to it. It's a 17-minute podcast every morning, Monday through Friday. And these 2 guys just kick massive tail. And they were talking about today how these big food companies, they might have missed the mark with like the Impossible Burger and, the plant-based meat. Well, now they're getting into plant-based fish. And they're going to attack that market so powerfully and so hard, right? What's the other one? Sonos. I was just listening to the podcast this morning. Sonos, the speaker company.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, 5 years ago, they went and connected with Google to try to get their technology into Google, but they had a bunch of patents, right? Google basically stole the patents, and they went and sued Google. And Friday, the judgment was for them. So they actually beat Google, right? And now Google may have to license every single Sonos speaker or Google will have to pay Sonos licensing fees for the technology that they quote unquote stole, right? So licensing deals is huge. So look for those gaps. That's such a big question, David. I would need another hour to kind of sift through that. But I think the biggest thing that I want you guys to get is to find that gap between audience frustration and competitor offering, and go in on that hard.
Yeah. So do you have a technique, Henry, on how to find the blue ocean that you're talking about?
Yeah. So let me give you another example, right? There's a brand out there called Figs. I don't know if you ever heard of it, right? So I worked at a hospital, and I understand scrubs, the uniform of all, hospital employees. And there's nothing more that these nurses and these healthcare professionals hate the most is these scrubs that make them look like SpongeBob. No matter how skinny you are, right? You look like SpongeBob in scrubs, right? And so there's this brand out there called Figs. So they looked at Lululemon. They looked at the trend of athletic leisure. And they said, how can we make scrubs fashionable? So they created Figs. So my wife, my sister-in-law is actually a nurse manager up in New York Presbyterian in the city. And she came over one day, and she's wearing these scrubs. And I go, that looks like a business suit. Like just the texture and the way it was fitting her, and like, she's in good shape. So like, I was like, this looks like a beautiful suit. She goes, yeah, these are my Figs. And it just coincidentally, today they were talking about Figs, or yesterday they were talking about Figs on this podcast. So I was cracking up. But here is a founder that said, here's a pain point. Here's a pain point that's not being served. So it is that small, right? I give you a quick example. How I saw my blue ocean was this. Everybody kind of knows me as like the funnel guy, right? You're pretty savvy with click funnels and building sales and marketing funnels. And everybody out there that was building these things, they had no branding experience, nor did they have any design experience. They can Frankenstein a funnel together using the templates and stuff.
I love that. You brought innovation from outside the industry. I love that.
And that's where I killed that market. And that's where I found my blue ocean, because there was nobody serving that market with the level of design and quality like me. Another big gap I see, and feel free to steal this one from me, guys, but there's a lot of coaches and consultants out there that are strictly lip service.
That's right.
They'll tell you, you got to do this.
Yeah.
And then they take your 10 grand.
Yep.
And then they say, go figure it out. Now you know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And I paid that 10 grand so many times.
Yep.
And got nothing. Right.
Yep.
I got a bunch of knowledge. So I won't say nothing. I got a bunch of knowledge, but I got a bunch of knowledge I didn't know what to do with.
And then you created a program. Sorry, David Harder. You created a program on how to communicate with people, so that didn't happen to them. That happened to you. Back to you, Dave Harder.
8:05 is the time. We are InfinityX. If somebody has a question for Henry, please put your hand up or mention it in the chat.
Look at Kabir. Kabir's on fire. He's ready to go.
There he is.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm happy to field any questions. I wasn't really monitoring the chat so much, but
Big Daddy got his hand up. Kabir got his hand up.
Yeah. It's in the race, we got Kabir first. So Kabir, go ahead and unmute yourself, brother.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, man? Henry? Nice to hear from you. Love hearing your story.
thank you.
I wanted to first offer some condolences. I believe your dog of 9 years yesterday passed away.
Yeah.
My condolences on that, and also happy birthday to your son turning 4 tomorrow.
Thank
So
you.
I had kind of like a two-part question for you. So on the day that you had to refund $40,000, how were you able to keep your head up and allow yourself to still see the opportunities? And moving forward, really owning up, because any good business owner always owns up to their own challenges, right? So I'm sure that that's how you move forward, taking ownership of those challenges and moving forward from there. So how did you really own up to it and knowing that this is still something that you can do and it is what you want to do and kind of go from there?
That's a great question. So this is a really good lesson in business and in life. So one of my big things in life was you always got to do the right thing. Like that's something that even if you are wrong, you got to do the right thing. So I knew I wasn't properly serving my clients. So I did not deserve their money. So that's why I refunded them the 40K and each 20. So
Sure.
What I realized was I would rather do the right thing than try to fight them knowing I was wrong. Okay. But here's what happened. So not to get too long-winded, one of the guys was pretty savvy. One of the disgruntled clients was pretty savvy with tech. And you could still do it to this day, but he had this company that would leave reviews, like Google reviews and right?
Yeah.
Right. And you could hire these services and they could go and they could do Google reviews and give all 5 stars and right. And it's cheating in my opinion,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he used this service a different way. When this all went down, and I'm not going to lie, there were some screaming matches going back and forth between me and him.
Sure.
He took it upon himself to take this bot service and go on my social media platforms and leave negative reviews. He actually went the morning this all went down, I was getting private messages on Facebook from family members going, "Did you get hacked? Because I just got a PM saying that you were a fraud and that you stole $10,000 or $15,000 from them." And I go, "What in the world?" That's when I knew like World War III was happening online. So I go, "Oh my God, I need to take care of this." They were going on my Instagram and commenting on all my posts saying that I was this fraud and that I was stealing from them and all of this. And I was like, and you could tell the English was horrible. So like you could tell it was botted, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Right. You get 1 or 2 people that are like, "Oh, who is this Henry guy?" You know? So I had to put out a statement on social media saying what was going on and telling everybody. So at that moment in time, I had probably put in about 1.5 years worth of social media FaceTime, a lot of video. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was out there, right? I was just sharing my story and sharing my personality and sharing my thoughts. And, you know, I started to build up this audience.
Yeah.
And so when this all went down, I put out the statement of what really went down. And I said, mishandled a project, went to hell. I refunded everybody. That's the story, you know? And so I had to take a day off that day because it was so overwhelming. So I come home around 7:00 and I go into Facebook for the first time just to read the comments in that statement. And there was like 178 comments. And it was all of my audience going to bat for me.
Wow.
Bravo.
And they were like, "Henry, we know that you're going through growing pains. You've been talking about it for 3 months in your live streams. And, you know, we know you're not a fraud, but we know that you need help, and it sucks that this all went down, but we know who you really are. So just, and it was just one of those comments after the other that day. And so what I realized was, this is a 40K hole I got to get out of.
Yeah.
So how do I get out of it? So there was a couple things that I did. I asked for help. Okay. I asked for help, and I told my father what was going on. And he said, Henry, I don't want to tell you this, but I'll tell you this because you need help. He says, I've been putting away money for you for your entire life, and I never told you about it. So when I die, you have money. Okay. He said, so how much do you need? And I told him 40K. And he said, all right. He says, listen, I'm going to tell you this right to your face. If I give you this money, this is money coming out of that savings. So you can't come to me next year and ask for another 40. Right. So I said to him, I said, all right, how about we do this? How about you give me increments of 5K. And when I think I'm good, up to 40, I'll say, stop sending me the money. So we got to about 32,000, and I said, don't need the rest. Keep it, save it. I sold 2 Rolex watches, put that money right back into the business. And that's how I got my 40. And then the funny thing was, that year I did 1.3 million in sales, and I got the 2 Comma Club award. So this award right over my head here is when you have a sales funnel that generates over $1 million in revenue. And so I knew that was the catalyst. That was the back-breaking pain that I had to go through in order to deserve that award. And so that gave me the momentum and the abundance mindset that I could get out of this. If I can get out of this, I can get out of anything. And that was that lesson. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just a small follow-up on that. What would happen if tomorrow, if you hit a similar roadblock, and how would you behave differently this time?
So the good news is I've gotten very financially intelligent over the past 4 years. So if that were to happen again, I would not have to go to anybody, because I have the financial ability to get myself out of it. Right. So one of the things that I realized growing up is you really have to live within your means. People say under your means, you could live under your means too. That's fantastic. But when you live within your means, you have runway. And that's one thing that I learned later on in life. The more runway you have, the better. So like when COVID hit last year, I had so much runway built up. It was like a blip, and like COVID never really affected my business. If anything, we had record-breaking months during the COVID year, because everybody got caught with their pants down because they realized how unprepared they were for the digital online presence. Definitely. So they all came rushing to me saying, oh my God, I need a new website. I need a funnel. I need to get my act together on social media because now I'm working from home. And, or I got fired and I need to fend for myself now. So some people really reinvested back into themselves, and we were happy to serve those people.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kabir. Yeah.
Great question.
Would love to connect as well later. I'll pass the mic to somebody else.
Sure.
Thank
Beautiful. Big Daddy, I think, had a question, and then Nikhil typed in a question. Is Big Daddy still here?
Big Daddy's still here.
There you go, Tom.
My video on? I don't know.
Yeah.
So Henry, really, really great story, and the way you the way you deliver the story is just really powerful. And I really, I try to make all of these InfinityX things, and some of course are better than others, but this was just spot on, at least for me. So thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you.
You said 2 things in the course of what you were saying that I picked up on, both as they relate to coaches.
Okay.
You said that you recognize that you didn't have like business acumen and you had to pick a coach. So my first question is, what criteria worked for Henry in picking a coach? And then at the tail end of what you were saying, you said there are plenty of people out there that will take your 10 grand but not really deliver. So how do you weed that out would be the second part of the coach question.
Oh, that's a great question. So let's tackle question one, right? So one of the things that I look for immediately is from a coach is, are you achieving or did you achieve the results that I am looking for? That's number one. Okay. So if you did, then chances are you're going to have the insights that I need to fast track my way to get to where you're at right now. That's number one. Number two is, do you have the values that align with my values? Because I know a lot of super successful people where when you really get to meet them, you're like, oh, whoa, I did not realize that you did it that way. And maybe that way, air quotes, wasn't really ethical through your perspective. Right. So,
sure.
So you got to make sure that their values align with your values. Make sure you do your homework, make sure that they are practicing what they preach and that they achieved what you want. Right. That's number one. Number two, setting expectations. I just actually did it's in a video or an Instagram carousel. I forget, but I just did a piece of content about vetting the coach or consultant that you're looking to hire. One of the things that you want to ask is, what results are you promising here? What can I expect once this engagement is over? So I get this question a lot because I'm a premium service, and I won't lie about that. And I'm very proud of it, actually. So when they ask me, like, Henry, I'll spend 36K with you, what can I expect? And so I tell them, I don't know if this is going to make you money. Okay. But one of the things I can tell you is, going through this strategy, you are going to be well informed on what approaches and execution you need to take to make that goal of whatever you decide come to fruition. That I can promise you. But look, at the end of the day, I can't run your business. I could give you the keys to the Lamborghini, but if you don't want to drive it the way I told you and the way I trained you, right, I can't take responsibility for that. So here's what I promise my clients. I promise them a couple of things. One is, I'm going to leave you better than I found you. That I could promise. And if you don't think you are left better than I found you, then I don't deserve your money. Right. So I'll give you your money back. I don't even care about it. Right. I have never in that big refund 4 years ago was the last big refund I ever had to give.
Love it.
So that was that lesson. And I said to myself that day, that is your promise to yourself. You will deliver or over deliver what you promise. The other thing I'm going to promise is, I'm always going to be 3 steps ahead of you, because that's why you're hiring me in the first place. If you have to tell me what to do, I'm no longer a good fit.
Of value, right?
Yes,
right.
Period. So that's the big question I would ask. And what can I expect? And what are the results that you could promise? And see how they answer that. If they try to say, well, we can get you, and this is something that I hear a lot, we can get you 100 new clients in 30 days. All right. Well, what if you don't?
Right.
If that's, because that's a big promise, right? So what happens if you don't?
Actually, Henry, first of all, thank you for that. It's not just, hey, let's promise somebody 30 clients, but the real question is, can you promise somebody, because they may say, yeah, we gave you 30 opportunities. The real question is, can you promise 30 opportunities where people are in a peak state to hear the message that you have to share on why you can help change their world, right? Like that's the levels that we look to approach when we do our stuff. So excellent access, Big Daddy, excellent question. And thank you so much.
Great
Thank you,
questions.
Henry. Yeah, thank you.
Let's go.
Question.
Dave, can you read Nikhil's question out loud? Can you say it?
Yeah, I sure can. Yep, I sure can. And then we have a question from Parker Russo after that. So, Henry, from Nikhil Bond, who was your first hire when you were ready to scale?
Yeah. So it was project manager 1. So that the project manager could be an assistant, a virtual assistant, right? And that's exactly what this person was. And they helped me build out the team because now I had somebody to strategize with, right? And she knew, she was experienced. She was a very experienced virtual assistant. And I still have her today. We're going on 5 years having the same project manager, the same designers, the same developers, right? And I really kind of, I'm proud of that. I'm not going to lie, because there's a lot of people out there that go through virtual assistants or vendors like they go through their underwear. And it's the truth. And I go to say to myself, why is that happening to you over and over and over again? And one of the things I realize is they treat overseas workers like ninth world citizens.
Yeah.
And that really bothers me.
Yep.
Right. So I have my team is on 4 different continents. Okay. 3 different time zones. I treat them like they all live in New Jersey. And I pay them A rate. That's another thing that my uncle taught me. So he only hires union workers and he only pays them A rate. So when he gets a job and he needs the people to stay longer and to do the extra and to do they're happy to do it because he pays them a premium. So I pay all my virtual teams premiums. Oh, I remember hiring my one designer and he said, I'm $13 an hour. And I said, I'll give you 19. And I thought he was going to have a heart attack on the Zoom call.
He hit the floor. Yeah.
and I said, and it was funny because you know what you learn, you like to give back, right? So I said, what, you don't deserve 19 an hour? And he smiled.
50K.
And he said,
50K,
okay.
right?
He said, okay, I'm in.
Yep.
And so now, David, take a guess. I need something done on the fly.
Oh yeah.
This guy will pull over on the side of the road and do it on his phone for me, you know?
Yep.
So incentivizing your team, learning what they love, learning what really fuels them. I went to my project manager one day and I said, what's the biggest dream you have in your life that you would love to accomplish? She said, I want to take my family to Disney World, Singapore. Or Disney, what was it? I don't know if Disney's in Singapore, but it was Universal Studios or something in Singapore, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, what do flights look like from where you're at to Singapore? And I think it was like $300, $400 or something, right? From the Philippines. I said, here's what we're going to do. If we hit our goal this year, you and your whole family are going to Universal, Singapore.
Boom.
And so do you think we hit our goal?
You
and
exceeded the goal.
She still talks about that family trip to Universal Singapore. And it was like 4 years ago. Right. So those are the things that you do to fuel your team. It's not that dictatorship anymore. It's not you have to do this because you live over there and I live over here and I'm more important than you. That's a bad attitude. Those people, they're people too. They have families. They have, they have people and lives to support just like you do. So just treat them that way and you'll see what happens. So that's just a little pro tip when you're building out your team is finding what drives them. And it's not always money. It's not always money.
Yeah.
One more question coming in from Parker Russo. Parker, go ahead and unmute, brother.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
What's up, Henry? I just want to tell you that story was amazing. It hits home with me, particularly like a lot of other people on the channel. I attend these weekly. I help build out the processes through it. I also own a branding and marketing agency in Freehold, New Jersey. So a lot of this hits home, cut from the same cloth kind of deal with me. So yeah, that story was literally awesome. And I have I have my best designers in Nigeria, my best marketers in, Switzerland. So I hear you on that. I have a lot of VAs that I work with, constantly. None of my guys are really based in Jersey full time. So I guess the only thing that I've ever struggled in is everything that I've learned. I've had some mentor figures on the way, that acted, but none of them were in the same role as me, in a sense of like, none of them were marketers, none of them were branders, none of them were in that, in that space. So are all your mentors that you've had in your life, or your mentor that you had, or coach, or whoever it may be, were they in that space of yours? And did they know all the systems and, that you needed to have and build out in order to get to where you are today?
That's a great question.
Great
so
question.
the answer, yeah, it's a phenomenal question. The answer is no. Like Russell Brunson knows nothing about design industry, nothing, but he knows digital marketing like the back of his hand. So that was one. So one of the things that you want to build out, especially for you, Parker, doing what basically the same that I'm doing, is build out your board of directors. Build out your board of directors. So I have my board of directors, and then I have my team of executioners, right? Don't expect your executioners to give you that strategic insight.
Right.
They're executioners, right? You know that. So what's your board of directors look like? So I'll give you mine. Okay. Because we're in similar trades.
Mm-hmm.
One is a mindset coach, hands down. You have to have one. You have to have a mindset coach. You have to have somebody telling you, Henry, where's your head at today?
Right.
You're not working at you're not working at full potential here. And they call you out on that. Because, I'm working on 12 cylinders because I love doing these types of talks, but yeah. You don't think that I had bad days? I mean, yesterday I had to put my dog down that I just absolutely loved. There was so much meaning behind this dog. I mean, this dog basically convinced my wife and I to have a child. That's how much meaning is behind this dog. And I sat there and I watched him take his last breath. You don't think yesterday was one of the hardest days of my life? First person I reached out to was my mindset coach. And I said, I am hurting today.
Yeah.
And she coached me up, she definitely coached me up. And I came home and I made the best of the day. Right. So that's one. Number two, oh man, I'm blanking. Is business coach, obviously. So that's the person that you see in your industry that's crushing it, right? That can help you, that is already experiencing what you're experiencing. All right. That's the second board seat. The third board seat, well, for me personally, is I'm always trying to level up my social media presence, even me, right? And I'm on it every day. I'm always trying to level up. So I have a social media coach that is absolutely a rock star in what he's a little younger than me. So he keeps me young and he keeps me fresh and he keeps me, on trend.
Right.
I'm not going to be making those Instagram reels that are going like this and pointing around. That's just not my style. You're never going to catch me doing that. Right. But he really keeps my content on rails. And like I posted something the other day. He's like, Henry, how's this going to help a coach? How is this going to help somebody scale to 7 figures? And I'm like, you're absolutely right. Delete. Right. So that's another one. Right. So you want to find your strategic thinkers. So wherever you're hurting or deficient, find that strategic thinker that's really awesome in that space and just put them on your board. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time. It may just be a 3-month stint, and then you just hire them on an on-needed basis or as needed basis. But you want to find those strategic thinkers where you need them. Like we were looking into YouTube ads, and we were interviewing some some people that run YouTube ads, and my business coach said, why do you need that? Why don't you just start creating shorts? Because shorts are going to really help you blow up and get you bigger reach, because YouTube is really pushing YouTube shorts right now.
Yeah.
So we just saved a boatload of money hiring, because these guys aren't cheap. They want like $5K a month plus ad spend. Like, you know, we're looking 3-month minimum. We're looking 20 grand, right? So my business coach came to the rescue there and said, keep your money. If you're going to spend 20 grand over the next 3 months, put it back into your team, dude. Put it back into your team. You got the manpower. Put that money into your team. Create more shorts. And I'd be creating shorts for 3 years to spend 20 grand. That's because my editors aren't that expensive. So that was a great catch by my business coach. And that's why that board of directors is so important, because I'm a spender. I don't mind spending money, especially if I believe it's going to help make me a better person and the business a better quality service. Right. But you always need to have that outside perspective, because you can be very, very creative with your execution, which will cost you a fraction of what you thought you would have to spend.
Right.
Henry, you got time for one? You got time for one more question?
Yeah. I got one more.
All right, Dave Hammer, go ahead, buddy.
Henry, thank you, by the way. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Parker.
Hey, Henry, thanks for the time. Well, first of all, sorry about the passing of your dog, because I can't imagine when mine passes what it's like. It's losing a family member. So I totally am in tune with that. So my condolences there.
Thank you.
What I was struck by during telling of your story was how you used the springboard of a setback with refunding the money. And what resonated with me was that you had your dad who was there to help, but it must have given you such strength. And obviously it looked like it propelled you completely forward, and you haven't stopped since, of being able to tell your dad, you know what, just give me $5 grand, a little bit here and there. And then when you got to 32, you were like, Dad, I got this now. And I just, that resonated with me, because that's happened to me in my life. So I appreciate that story, and I just wanted to commend you on you were able to subjugate your ego, and you were able to take what could have been a huge negative that you maybe could not have gotten yourself out of, and you use it as a teaching moment. And I just applaud you for what you did there.
Oh,
in
thank you, Dave.
that instance.
I'll give you a little backstory to that. So, when he was giving me that money, I was trying to offset it any which way I could, right? Because I really didn't want to take that money. I really didn't. I didn't deserve it, right? And I kept saying that to myself. I didn't deserve it. So here's what happened. So I said to myself, listen, these Rolexes got to go back. They were impulse buys to begin with, and they got to go back. And that'll be the 25 grand you need to freaking get yourself back on track, right? So I tell my father I'm going to do it, and he's like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. And so I said, all right. So again, big ego at the time. Took me 2 weeks to get in my car to drive down to the jewelry store to sell those watches back, right? So I get down there, and they give me a handful of cash, and I'm driving down Route 80 back to Sparta. So I call my father and I say, I got to tell you, it didn't sting as hard as I thought to give those watches back. And so my father said, are you done? And I said, with what? He said, this. He said, what are you going to do one day when your boy looks you in the eyes and says, Daddy, can you buy me those sneakers? And you got to tell him no, because you don't have the money to buy him those sneakers. He said, I worked, excuse my language, 4 fucking jobs to make sure there was food on your table every day and clothes on your back. He said, I didn't do that to you, so don't do it to that kid. And now my eyes,
Yeah.
forget it. I'm almost had to pull over, right?
Yep.
Because I said, that's it. That's it. That is a blessing of a message. And that was it. I now, well, to that day, I came home and I was a big Jim Rohn fan. I still am. But Jim Rohn, in one of his books, talks about the 70, 10, 10, 10 split. So basically it's live off of 70% of what you earn and invest the other 30 in different categories. And so that's what I've done for the past 4 years. And I've built up a huge investment account in stocks. I have a beautiful nest egg of I call it runway money, where I don't have to worry so much. I don't have to work every hour of the day just so I can live, right? And so that's what I do. I only live off of 70% of what I earn, and that 10% goes into stocks, 10% goes into marketing, and 10% just goes into like a rainy day fund. And I just done that consistently. Now I like get excited. Like when I get a big payment, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to divvy this up, right? And it's become a game for me. It's become a game for me. And now I literally live my life like that. And my son's 4 years old. He's got more bank accounts than I do, because I'll make sure that he'll never go through those, that financial illiteracy that I went through. It's funny because my father, he still got the first quarter that he earned. And then I see my uncle who lives like, Jesus Christ. I mean, you'd think it would be, you thought he was lifestyles that are rich and famous. He still is. And it's like, I was caught between my frugal father and this higher than life, high profile person that had the drivers and the cars and the Jesus. He would have parties at his house in Hohokus and there would be valet parking in his freaking driveway. This is the shit that I grew up with. And I was like, I want that. Who wouldn't want that? And when I started to make some money, like I always wanted to be like Uncle Joe. And the funny thing was I was living that lifestyle and I was pissing him off because of it, because he was like, Henry, this isn't the way I did it in the beginning. I didn't do it. This guy started with one dump truck. Now he's got a $200 million construction company. Wow. So he reinvested in his business from the very beginning. He saw me pissing it away to kind of show him how successful I was, but he saw right through that shit. So did my father. Right. And so that was a huge, huge life lesson for me. And so, now I have a story to tell. And, I hope Dante will never make that same mistake.
Incredible. Well, appreciate the candor. I appreciate the stories. And thanks. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Incredible journey, incredible human, incredible story. Henry, parting shots for the good folks here at InfinityX.
Oh man, listen, guys and gals. I ran into this quote recently that really hit me hard. And it went along the lines of, you're a king unless you make excuses. You're already a king unless you make excuses. So if you're a female, you could say, I'm already a queen unless I make excuses. And that was something that I had to learn growing up. I didn't realize that I had everything that I ever wanted in my life literally under my nose. And I just couldn't see it because I wasn't grateful. I wasn't appreciative. And I was very selfish. And so I live, and this was taught. It wasn't embedded It wasn't something that it just came to me. Like some other people, like my wife grew up with a big family. So there's not a selfish bone in her body. Me, I'm an only child. So it was me my whole life. So it was very, very hard for me to understand this, but here it is on a bumper sticker. You get in life what you give.
What you give. Amen.
That's it. So if you're not happy with your business, how much have you given it? Are you nurturing it the way it should be nurtured? Are you giving to your audience as much as you should be giving? You know, people think branding is all about you and what you need to do and what you need to say and what you need. Branding is none of that. Branding is what you can give to your audience, give to your clients an experience that is going to make them feel something that they can't get anywhere else. So you get in life what you give.
Unbelievably mic dropping human excellence at its finest on the InfinityX stage. Henry, that is the ultimate parting shot. Now I have a question for you. How do people get more of Mr. Henry Kaminski, the brand ambassador? 150,000 subscribers on Instagram and going.
Listen,
how do they find you, brother?
Super easy. If you go to Unique Designs with a Z at the end, not an S, .net, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to Instagram right there. You could check out the Brand Doctor podcast. We're up to like 440 episodes. And then we also have a masterclass there that I'm proud of. I just redid it, but it's 20 minutes long, and it gets right down to it. And it basically is going to explain to you in a real Jersey style what the top 5% of entrepreneurs are doing to scale to 7 figures and what they're not doing. And I'm sure you're going to go through that 20-minute video going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing that. Why am I still doing that? Go check out that masterclass. I won't let you down. And I know you're going to walk away with an insight that you're going to be like, let's go.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Compelling conversation, to say the least. Henry, I see you in the epic future. I see you in my future, and I think that there's more conversation to be had, because I think we could create some magical things together. I identified with everything that you shared around the runway, what you did for yourself during the COVID pandemic is what we were successful and able to do for many of our business owners and our clients during that same period of time. So I'd love to learn more about what you did to really to scale that out and to create that base camp, because I think that there's some synergies. And I just can't thank you enough for being so vulnerable. On behalf of my partner, Rob, who had to step off, I can't thank you enough for being as vulnerable as you were and as insightful as that you are. And I just cannot wait to see what the future holds for Henry Kaminski. And I will guarantee that your son is going to watch this podcast someday and feel mighty proud, my brother, mighty proud.
Thank you for having me, guys. And thanks for all the great questions and your time today. And I hope I helped out in one way or another. So have an amazing day, everyone.
Have an amazing day, everybody. We are InfinityX. We will see you next Tuesday. Henry, thank you so very much. And on behalf of my partner, Rob Gill, this is Dave Harder with InfinityX, and we are signing off. Good night, everybody.